Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Godzilla X Kong figure. Yes, there are new figures coming out, some of which are still really hard to get a hold of. One of which has just recently shown up on Amazon, actually. I think the Kong did as well, but I only grabbed the Godzilla. But you can see we have the Mega Heat Ray Godzilla with a misting heat ray, and that is definitely pretty fun. And once I saw that this figure was revealed, I was like, yep, definitely got to grab that one, got to check that one out. It is a little pricey, but it's also really quite large. I think with tax, it was somewhere around like 40 bucks, so it's like $35, $36, something like that, but plus tax, it'll end up costing you near $40 if you order it on Amazon, or at least that's what it was when I ordered it. But you can see, again, the packaging looks pretty much like the standard packaging you usually get. And then here on the back, same deal. You can see just a really cool image of the fact that the Godzilla has light up spines and a misting heat ray. So that should be pretty fun to check out. So let's pop this out of the box and do just that. So first of all, straight out of the packaging, there is our Godzilla, and you can see it's pretty darn big. I would say there's a very safe bet this is the largest Playmates Godzilla to come out for Godzilla X Kong. I think the giant Godzilla they had released might be a little bit smaller than this, but we will find that out as we go along. However, you can see it does look pretty cool as per usual. I definitely like the translucency of the spines, which I'm sure is to help the light up feature, but the only way to truly tell, of course, how cool this is with a quick closer look, and then we'll check the action feature and everything out after that. So overall, when it comes to the sculpt and what we normally get for the Playmates Godzilla line, I would say that this is pretty much right on par with everything else. The sculpt looks pretty much the same as the previously released versions of Godzilla. I don't think that they've really altered it all that much, and I couldn't see Playmates doing that because they don't seem like they put too much effort into their figures. I'm not trying to say that to insult them, because I think they do a fun job, but they don't do a great job. And you can see, in typical Playmates fashion, this figure, just like many others, has a very washed out look to it when it comes to the fine detail. And as you move through the body, it honestly feels like it gets worse. As you move down, you see, again, not much in the way of fine detailing or anything. Like, the texturing is kind of there. Like, they have the general sculpt pretty decently with like the osteoderms and the armored scales and stuff throughout, but when it comes to really fine detail, that is severely lacking as per usual. And you can see leading out into the tail, it honestly somehow gets worse the further into the figure you get. You can see even less and less detail, it seems. That said, the overall appearance to Godzilla looks kind of, again, cool, I guess. Like, he definitely resembles the evolved Godzilla from the film pretty nicely, and they've done a good job as far as the colors go, because you can see we primarily have like this grayish, almost like a grayish blue tone for Godzilla, a fairly smooth transition to a brown for the underbelly, starting here in the throat, moving down through the chest, then down all the way. Actually, let's see if we go all the way out through the tail. Yeah, pretty much the entire way, almost all the way out to about here, and then it tapers off. So you've got that going for it. And we also have the really cool translucent pink spines. Now that specifically does look really nice, and I think the overall pinkish tone that they have on these actually looks a little bit nicer than the previous Godzillas that had translucency to the spines. I just really think that the pink looks super cool on this, and honestly I feel like the spines might be even more highly detailed than the body, because the body again has that washed out appearance to it. It's hard to really tell on these spines, but they look fairly decent as far as the detail goes. Again, not super highly detailed, but maybe a little better than what we see in the body. As you move down, you do have this pinkish tone pick up in the tail, which is pretty thick, pretty ugly, doesn't really look that great, and doesn't really cover the spines, basically. Well, I mean, it does cover the spines, but it also covers the entire back of the tail moving out, and you can see it kind of tapers off, or at least becomes smaller before reaching out here on that very interesting ending here to the tail of Godzilla, at least as far as the evolved version goes. And you can see, again, we have that pinkish tone that completely overtakes that area as well. And then as you move back up, you also have a little bit there on the back of the elbow. You do have the nails painted on the hands, which is nice. Same deal for the feet. You do also have the nails painted there, which is also a plus. But I don't think we really need to go over the sculpt or anything too much, because we've already done that in previous reviews. I really don't think that this one differs pretty much at all From the previously released Godzillas, I do notice a very obvious seam right here, and I haven't actually, I haven't looked at the instructions or anything yet, but it looks as though that's where you would go ahead and apply the water to give us the misting heat ray. That's pretty much what I was figuring right out of the gate. As far as the articulation goes, you do have articulation in the jaw, but I think that's part of the action feature. You also have arm articulation forward and back, and actually out away from the body a little bit. That's some pretty decent mobility right there. You have a swivel for the wrist as well, which is a plus. As you move down, you've got the hip forward and back really smoothly, and then you've also got the ankle, maybe? Yes, so we do have a swivel in the ankle. The foot is actually rubber, like it's actually kind of squishy. The rest of the figure is a pretty hard plastic. No, actually the hands are kind of squishy, but the foot specifically is really flexible, which is interesting. And then as we move out here, we also have tail articulation, which can go up, left, right, and swivel. Pretty much the standard when it comes to these Godzilla figures. So let's go ahead, check out the light and sound aspect, and then the actual misting heat ray. Now I have the lights kind of dimmed a little bit. We'll of course turn them off entirely here in a moment. But there's a button here, and the button is incredibly obvious. They didn't even try to hide it. Just like I said with the I think it was like the Battle Roar, whatever the roaring version was before. I wish they would try to hide the button a little bit better. I feel like it would just look nicer, but they chose to go the route of the button actually, like, you can see it kind of extends out away from the body. It's probably a little hard to see right now because the lights are dimmed, but it does kind of extend out from the body just a little bit. Not a lot, though, which is a plus. It doesn't look super obvious or out of place, but they could have just made it flush with the rest of the body, but it actually is extended just slightly. But overall, I think it actually looks better than the Battle Roar version. So let's go ahead, push the button. So as we could see, the eyes lit up, the spines lit up, and then we also saw a light come from inside the mouth. So let's turn the lights off entirely, and we'll check that out one more time. So that definitely looked really cool, and we could obviously hear the sound of the atomic breath. Let's get a little bit of a closer shot of the face here while it does this. Well, it didn't focus too well, and I did love the Godzilla noise there. Let's do it again. Go ahead and turn it toward us so we can get a look at the inside of the mouth a little bit. Okay, that actually looks extremely, extremely cool. So we don't have the lights actually on completely quite yet. They're still slightly dimmed, but I have the instructions here as well as the little kind of, I guess the tool we use to fill our Godzilla with water. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. I'm going to fill the Godzilla, and then we'll check out the misting heat ray. So we have filled the Godzilla up, and it does state that it might take a few tries before it actually starts working perfectly. So let's go ahead and do it. Oh wow, that was straight out of the gate. That did not take a few tries at all. Let's go ahead and dim the lights. I don't know if it's going to look any cooler with the lights off, but we'll try it. Okay, well it would if my camera would stay focused on it. There, you can definitely see it actually looks super cool. So it actually looks awesome. Oh, wow, that was weird. It just started on its own. So it's haunted on top of everything. But it does look really cool. Very much so reminds me of the RC Godzilla and the way the heat ray worked on that figure. But let's go ahead and turn the lights back on one more time, and we'll check it out again once more as far as the heat ray goes. So there you go. You can very clearly see how that misting heat ray works. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the snout of Godzilla, you're looking at about 20.5 inches or 52 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the head of Godzilla, just shy of 13 inches or right around 33 centimeters, somewhere in that vicinity. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our misting heat ray Godzilla, and you can see it does have a pretty darn good size to it. Definitely quite large, quite impressive as a whole. And to further show you that, I feel like we should really only need like 2 more comparisons, I would think, at this point, because first of all, we have the Playmates 6-inch version of Godzilla, and you can very clearly see that one is significantly smaller. And then we've also got the Playmates Giant Godzilla, which you can now see next to the newer Misting Heat Ray version. It's definitely a little bit smaller, so as far as I can recall, I think that makes this the largest of the evolved Godzillas to come out so far, as it is definitely a bit larger than the giant Godzilla that had come out previously. You can also see how much nicer the spines look on the newer one compared to the older one as far as the tone of color used. I feel like it looks a bit more screen accurate on the newer one, whereas the older one had more of like an orangish sort of tint to it, which didn't make it look all that great. And another thing that was very awkward about the older one is the color of the spines didn't quite match up to the pinkish tone they had used moving down the tail, and they've used a totally different pink on the new one, and the spines match up to it a whole lot better. So another thing actually you can see straight away is there are also screw holes on the older version here. The giant Godzilla, there are no screw holes that I've noticed on the newer Heat Ray Godzilla. So again, I would say this is probably one of the best, if not the best, of the Playmates Godzilla Evolved figures that have come out. So this brand new Playmates Godzilla X Kong Misting Heat Ray Godzilla is definitely really cool, actually. It's probably my favorite Godzilla to come from the line overall. Maybe. I mean, I might like the 6-inch version a little bit better just because I feel like the detail pops a little nicer on that figure, but even still, this new Misting Heat Ray version does look really cool. It's very impressive as far as the size goes. It's also probably the best painted of these figures so far because the tones match nicely through the entire course of the body as far as the spines and stuff go. They still have the paint a little bit too thick and not quite as smooth as it could be, but still not too bad. The overall sculpt is actually a little bit different when it comes to the general appearance for sure compared to the other versions. Like the pose and positioning of the head and everything is definitely different. Even the spines on the elbow are actually shaped differently on the newer one. They were a bit longer on the older one. So there are definitely some differences when it comes to the sculpt, and I feel like maybe they took the same Godzilla sculpt and then just basically repositioned it because the detail and everything looks pretty close to the same, pretty much the same. Still has the same muted look and stuff throughout, still has the same general appearance, but the newer one definitely does look a lot nicer. The tail's also posed differently, so the pose as a whole is entirely different from the older versions that they had released. And very clearly they have made some updates to the sculpt to make it look a bit more screen accurate and just generally better than the older Godzillas did look. And another thing that's good about this one is we don't have to deal with any kind of awkward paint for the eyes because the eyes are basically glass eyes so that they light up, or plastic eyes, again, so they light up for the action feature. But overall, I would say it's far and away the most impressive looking Playmates Godzilla Evolved figure so far. The sculpt, even though muted, does look really nice, very impressive. Definitely could look better had they just made the detail a little more vibrant, but it still looks pretty decent, and even still with it being watered down and washed out in a lot of areas, it somehow looks better than the older ones did. The detail just pops a little bit better. It also doesn't have screw holes, which is a huge plus. The articulation is pretty nice, pretty smooth overall. I feel like that works even better than the older ones, especially because there seems to be a little bit more mobility in the arms than we had on the older ones. The action feature and sounds is absolutely awesome. I love the light up aspect to this. It looks great, very nicely replicates what you see in the film. You also have some epic noises that happen when you do push the button on the side, and on top of that you have a super cool misting heat ray. And another thing that is a plus when you look at the Battle Roar figure and the way that the button was really pushed out on the side for you to activate the action feature, although this one is pushed out, is not pushed out nearly as far as the other one was, so it kind of doesn't sit perfectly within the body, and it is still very obvious, but it's a little bit nicer than we saw in the older one as far as like the Battle Roar Godzilla. But overall, it is a very, very cool figure and one that I definitely recommend picking up. And we can also see now why the price was nearing the $35 to $40 range once you add tax into the situation. But you can see the, again, figure is really quite nice, impressive in size, and also pretty impressive in weight. It is definitely the heaviest of the Playmates figures as well. So if you are interested in picking this one up and adding it to your collection, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Amazon.com, because that is is exactly where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link. Go grab this very, very cool figure and like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.